For hundreds of thousands of German soldiers, the war did not end with a bullet. It ended with a sea voyage. Between 1943 and 1945, some 371,000 German prisoners of war were shipped across the Atlantic to the United States. Africa Corps veterans captured in Tunisia, infantrymen swept up in Normandy, teenagers pressed into uniform by a collapsing state. The crossing took 2 weeks. They rode Liberty ships and troop transports returning empty from Europe, and they spent those 2 weeks afraid of their own navy first. A U-boat does not check the nationality of the men in a ship's hold, but a deeper fear waited behind that one. Nazi propaganda had told them exactly what America would be: bombed-out ports, a starving population, revenge. They had been warned that capture meant humiliation, forced labor. Or worse, memoirs later recalled men bracing to be paraded through hostile crowds or simply worked to death. The first shock was not the surrender itself. It was what they saw from the railings when the ships finally came into harbor, and how little of it made any sense. The ports were intact. More than intact, they were blazing. New York rose out of the water, lit from street to skyline. No blackout, no craters, no rubble. The men crowded the railings and searched the shoreline for damage, because there had to be damage. According to post-war accounts, the same question moved through ship after ship, half a whisper, half a prayer. Wo sind die Ruinen? Where are the ruins? There were no ruins, there never had been. The second shock came at the rail yards. These men had crossed Europe in freight cars, 40 to a boxcar, standing room, no light. Now American military police walked them to Pullman passenger coaches. Upholstered seats, windows, dining service. Some prisoners refused to sit down at first, certain the cars were meant for the guards. Then the trains rolled inland, for days, through cities with glass in every window, past highways full of civilian cars, fields running unbroken to the horizon, towns where the streetlights simply stayed on all night. Memoirs describe the arithmetic every man was silently doing at those windows. One veteran put it plainly: anyone who saw this country understood the war was lost. The camps were waiting at the end of the lines, hundreds of them, scattered across more than 40 states, most of them thrown up in months. Wooden barracks, wire, guard towers, dust. Texas alone held more prisoners than any other state. The men filed in, expecting the reckoning to begin. Whatever the lights in the trains had meant, the camp was where propaganda said the punishment lived. Instead, they were registered, deloused, issued blankets, and fed. The first meal is the moment the memoirs return to again and again. Trays came out with meat, real eggs, hot coffee, and white bread, soft, refined loaves that men who had eaten gritty wartime ersatz for years mistook for cake. A stillness settled over the mess hall. Nobody ate. Years of propaganda held them in their seats. This was staged. A photograph for the newspapers. A trick before an interrogation. The food would be gone tomorrow. Then one man, a gaunt Africa Corps veteran, according to one camp account, reached out and broke off a piece of the bread, smelled it, ate it. He made a sound the others remembered for years, and then everyone was eating. The food was there again the next morning, and the morning after that. What broke their expectations was not the abundance, it was the consistency. Under the Geneva Convention, the U.S. Army fed prisoners the same base ration as its own garrison troops. That was doctrine, written down, budgeted, inspected. Many prisoners gained weight in their first months. The American press noticed and hated it. Newspapers sneered at the Fritz Ritz. The Army did not change the policy. Its reasoning was cold and simple. American boys were sitting in German camps, and reciprocity was the only leverage anyone had. The prisoners could volunteer to work farms, canneries, forestry for 80 cents a day in canteen scrip. The canteens sold cigarettes, soda, in some camps beer. Within months there were soccer leagues, orchestras, theater troupes, correspondence courses graded by American universities. And on the farms, something the regulations never intended. Prisoners and farm families worked the same rows and shared water in the same heat. Camp records describe farmers driving prisoners back to the gates in their own trucks. Memoirs describe kitchen tables, meals shared quietly against the rules, because that was simply how a farm fed the people who worked it. Discipline existed. Infractions were punished, but the punishments followed the rulebook, not a mood. For men raised inside a system of fear, that predictability was the strangest luxury of all. None of this made captivity gentle, and none of it made the story simple. Hardline Nazis ran intimidation networks inside the compounds, beatings for men who doubted the Reich out loud, and in several camps, murders dressed up as suicides. The army answered with segregation, concentrating committed loyalists in separate high-security camps like Alva, Oklahoma. 14 German prisoners were tried and executed for killing fellow POWs. The war did not stop at the wire. It only changed shape. The ease had limits too. After Germany surrendered, rations were cut. Newsreels from the liberated concentration camps hardened the guards' faces overnight. Memoirs recall the silence in the mess halls the week that footage reached the States. And repatriation, when it finally came in 1946, took many men not home, but to France or Britain first, for years of labor rebuilding what their army had wrecked. Some prisoners carried guilt out of the camps. They had been fed and paid while their country's victims starved. Others carried confusion. A few carried a gratitude they did not dare name in post-war Germany. Nearly all of them carried the same picture, a country too large, too lit, and too calm to ever have been beatable. In the ledgers of the Second World War, the camps in Texas and Minnesota and Louisiana barely register. No battle turned on a loaf of white bread, but something quieter happened there. In the decades after the war, thousands of former prisoners emigrated, many of them back to the very counties where they had been held, to the farms they had worked as enemies. In letters and interviews, the same recollection returns in one wording or another. Being captured by the Americans was the best luck the war ever gave them. They came looking for ruins. They found the reason there were none. Sometimes history is shaped not by what happens, but by what does not. If you found this story worth remembering, consider subscribing so these moments aren't lost to time. Like the video to help it reach more people, and comment below where you're watching from.